Welcome back to the PucknPod. On today's episode, we discuss the most recent NHL signings, trades, and waivers. And then we talk about curses in sports. And then we discuss the most recent moves in Major League Baseball. And finally, we talk about our favorite action movie stars. That's all coming up next, right here on the PucknPod. Let's puck and go. Well, gentlemen, I hate to open an episode of the PucknPod with such a somber thing, but I really wanted to, if it's all right with you guys, I'd like to dedicate this episode of the PucknPod to my grandfather, my papa, Paul Ohlenberger, who passed away, unfortunately, this past week. And, it's been a really rough week for my family and myself, so this, for me, feels like the right thing to do, if it's all right with you guys.
Oh, we're thinking about you, man. We're thinking about your family, and of course it is. Yep.
Well wishes, and certainly God bless.
You know, he was a really, really awesome person to be around my whole life. But one thing that he and I can really relate to this specific podcast is he was in fact a sports fan. He loved the Blue Jays. He actually, unfortunately, he was an Oilers fan. He lived in Edmonton for a very long time before moving to Nanaimo. So, I'm going to miss him a lot. And, I just like to dedicate this episode to him. Well, gentlemen, on to more positive things. It's another episode. We've got a lot of sports to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about some of the NHL moves, trades, and signings and things that we've seen over the past little while. Paul, can you give us some updates?
Yeah, so over the last, obviously we were gone for about a month there, and that was over the holidays, and there was moves and stuff like that were made before the holiday freeze. And some of the kind of more known trades that were done, the Montreal Canadiens did acquire Alexander Carrier from the Nashville Predators for younger defenseman Justin Barron. So far, the trade looks like it's worked out really well for them. The Montreal's been on a bit of a tear lately in terms of their play.
Yeah, they beat the Canucks.
I think he scored in his first two games that he played, actually, with the Habs, yeah.
He is definitely the kind of player you want on your team, all-around two-way player.
Yeah, and obviously with Nashville having kind of the year they've been having so far, acquiring a younger defenseman to try and build for the future, that kind of makes sense in that regards. The Pittsburgh Penguins reacquired Pierre-Olivier Joseph on the same day from the St. Louis Blues. So he got traded to the Blues and then got reacquired. So I don't know what Dubas is thinking with that, but
you don't have to worry about that. I was going to say, you don't have to worry about that anymore.
I'm sure he had his reasons.
Well, I mean, Dubas does seem like the kind of GM who likes his specific players. And a lot of times, a player will be let go, and you kind of think maybe they regret that decision when they see how they play on another team, right? So it just goes to show players can change the way they play if they get different coaching styles and things like that. So maybe that has something to do with it.
Very well the case.
I think that when he was in Toronto and even now with Pittsburgh, it seems like everything is calculated. Rather than a feeling, rather than an emotional trade, an emotional signing, anything like that, a lot of the... Having said that, you were in Leafland, so you were always under pressure, and things can get emotional. But
yeah, I was going to say maybe a lot of that had to do with the people around him more than anything. Yeah. Maybe he has somebody, he doesn't have somebody like Shanahan behind him going, make this move, or maybe it's an ownership thing too. Who knows? But I mean, GMs will change the way they run the team when they get another chance, and coaches will do the same thing when they go to a different team too. So.
I would say it's essentially irrelevant, the fact that how it affects me or how it affects you or how you think about it. But you can't deny the fact that he's a brilliant guy, very well educated, and he surrounds himself with brilliant, intelligent people. Yeah. And, there's nothing saying that he's doing a bad job or did a bad job or is going to do a bad job in the future. It's just, sometimes that fit isn't there, and that's what happened, right? Exactly. So, I mean, again, we weren't super impressed because he didn't deliver the best results, right? That's why a lot of people in Toronto were like, okay, time for a change. See you later. And Pittsburgh can have him, right? And there you go. And then who knows? We'll see what happens in the next little while for him. But, that transaction alone, it was... I guess we'll see if he continues this analytical.
Well, and to be fair,
side.
you look at Pittsburgh, and they're still bottom of the league, right? Like they're not going to be winning the cup this year or anything like that. So, I mean, we have yet to see what he's capable of as a GM for the Penguins, I think.
He seems to be a bit more of a paper transaction GM than he is a character driven GM. It seems to be he knows how to acquire them. He knows how to even somewhat develop the players. I feel like Mason Marchment and other players that have developed in their system and then exceeded in a different system. I think he bases maybe too much of his decisions on his analytics and instead of the actual character behind the player. And I think that's worked against him. It did for the Leafs, unfortunately. We'll see how that works in the long run with the Penguins.
For sure.
Former number 2 overall pick on the same day was traded as both Carrier and Joseph. Former number 2 pick from 2019, Capo Kakko, got traded to the Seattle Kraken for Will Borgen, a 3rd and a 6th round pick from the 2025 draft.
Pretty crazy when you consider the return. But at the same time, he is a former number 2 overall pick. So his ceiling is still there. And I mean, he's still a young player. There's a lot of potential there. It's just really unfortunate to see what came of that in New York.
And Will Borgen has been rumored for a couple of seasons now to leave Seattle.
Yeah.
Yet they've kept him. There's a reason that they've kept him. He's a good player.
Yeah.
He's done well there. He plays the game the right way. He plays it hard. And the Rangers lose out on Trouba, right? They waive Trouba.
Yeah.
And then, there's a little bit of a toughness hole there. And, Will Borgen will do that for you. He'll be solid. It just seems strange that now Seattle decides to make that change when he's really a key player in their lineup, or was a key player in their lineup.
Part of me wonders if it's because they don't see themselves going anywhere this year. So it's the right time because that's the return that was offered for them for him, Yeah. And I mean that's it's a tough decision as a GM to make because you're giving up on a player that does in fact help your team so much. But, in the end, I think it's the right idea. It's just basically get the best possible return. And this might have been just the best possible return that they thought they could get.
Well, and Kakko did score in his first game with Seattle. He hasn't done as much since, but if they can work with the development, they're still it's only been technically 5.5 years since he's been drafted, so they can still work on the development to make him to the star player that he was projected to be. Maybe that trade really works out well for them, but right now it's kind of a guess and we'll find out kind of thing.
I was there in 2019 when he got drafted. It was exciting. It was in Vancouver, and it was the same. It was the same one where we watched Jack Hughes get drafted by the Devils. So yeah, pretty exciting draft.
The Anaheim Ducks in the middle and slight beginning of December made 2 trades about a week apart. They originally acquired Jacob Trouba from New York. We're talking about New York. For Urho Vakinen, who was part of the Hampus Lindholm trade when that deal happened, and a 4th round pick, and no salary retention. Acquired all of Trouba's contract.
They had the money; they could do that. they had the cap room. I mean,
bottom of the league.
It's a big salary for sure.
$8 million a year.
Yeah.
And subsequently, like I said, the week later, they traded Cam Fowler and a 4th round pick for prospect Jeremy Biaka and a 2nd round pick.
Biaka Batuka. His brother plays for the Nanaimo Clippers.
Oh.
So
Biaka I love it.
And the only reason I know, for those in the audience that don't know, I am the announcer for the Nanaimo Clippers, so the rink announcer. I have to say Biaka Batuka, and it is a very hard name to say.
Joe.
It is a very hard. I know it's a very hard name to say, and it's funny. When that trade happened, I remember seeing all the comments on Twitter where people are like, "How do you say that name?" But I felt humbled to know that I could say it, and his brother is actually a really good defenseman for the BCHL. So it's kind of cool to be able to say that I can say that name.
Can you repeat what he just said?
Boudica?
We're calling him BK. That's all I got.
Biaka Batuka.
Even after hearing it 4 times, I still don't know what you're saying.
His brother is Anthony Biaka Batuka.
That's awesome.
That's a mouthful.
Shout out to Anthony.
The Colorado Avalanche made 2 goalie trades that were about a week apart as well. So they traded away Alexander Georgiev, prospect Nikolai Kovalenko, a second-round pick for 2026, and a conditional fifth-round 2026 pick to the Sharks for Mackenzie Blackwood. He played a few games for them, and they liked him and actually signed him to an extension.
Did he get hurt, though? Am I wrong in that? Did he get injured?
There was an incident about 3 or 4 days ago where I can't remember the player, but it's not a very nice player in the league, well known to be, fell on Blackwood's leg.
Yeah.
And he had a bit of an issue. Like, I think it kind of bent the wrong way.
Yeah.
And then, like, a melee it happened, and there was bodies everywhere.
Oh,
and Colorado didn't like it too much, clearly and obviously. So, I can't remember who that player was. But
they also acquired Giovanni Smith, a older prospect. I don't know how much of a prospect he actually is now.
Yeah.
A fifth-round pick for 2027, and they actually retained 14% of Gurriel's salary on that deal. And like I said, they seem to really like him. They've already signed Blackwood to an extension, and they have improved since that acquisition. So it's crazy. Georgiev, who was behind Shesterkin in the New York pipeline, had a great first year with Colorado, and he kind of just seems to lost his game.
It's tough. The goaltending game is interesting because some players thrive in certain markets. I think of like Corey Schneider, for example, in Vancouver, playing behind Roberto Luongo. He was a really good goalie, and then he got traded to New Jersey, and then basically went downhill from there. Eddie Lack, same story, where he went to Carolina and ended up basically fizzling out. It's definitely interesting. I'll say this about Colorado, though. They've been very active in the trade market this year. The Canucks got Brandstrom from them for Tucker Poolman.
That's right.
So they traded Tucker Poolman to Colorado and got Brandstrom from them. So definitely very active this year early on.
Well, and like I said, the other trade that they made was they acquired Scott Wedgwood from, funny enough, the Nashville Predators, again having their struggles. So you got two wood goaltenders in net.
That's right. I remember there was a joke in there somewhere about having a forest on the team or something.
Yeah. And gave up a younger goaltender, Justice Noonan, and a sixth-round pick to make that deal happen. So Nashville's obviously been getting younger with the deals that they're making. Colorado's been trying to fortify their goaltending, and then you look at Anaheim making changes on their D. They play better lately too.
I'll give Barry Trotz some credit here. Like he said, if we don't start winning soon, we're gonna have to start making changes. He was not kidding.
Yeah,
he was not kidding.
Yeah, he's pretty serious about it.
Yeah.
Surprisingly not too, was the David Jiricek trade. A lot given up on that deal for, again, he was a sixth overall pick in his draft. But they, Minnesota acquired Jiricek and a fifth round pick for young defenseman Damon Hunt, who's known to be an offensive defenseman, a first round pick in 2025, a second round pick in 2027, a third and fourth round pick in 2026. It's a boatload to give up for a slightly unproven.
That was to Columbus?
Columbus.
Yeah, Columbus is one of those teams. They had such a terrible offseason with what happened with Johnny Gaudreau that it feels like they're kind of almost at a standstill as to what they can do.
Yeah.
Because it's like we have this plan, and then all of a sudden our star player is no longer with us. What do we do now? Do we backtrack and try to rebuild, or where do we go? So I would hate to be the GM of that team right now.
That's a big wrench in your plans.
Yeah,
man. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. But I'm sure they're looking towards the future already.
Yeah.
There were contract extensions that have been done over the holidays and into the new year here. Mark Stelik, who was part of the Linus Ullmark deal to Ottawa, signed a 3-year extension, $4.7 million. So that's $1.567 per year AAV
with the Bruins.
With the Bruins,
yep.
Toronto just recently extended Philip Myers, and that was for 2 years, 1.7, so an 850 K AAV. And he's played pretty good so far with Riley on kind of the top kind of second pairing, because it seems to switch back and forth between Tannen McCabe and Riley Myers on.
That's
on
good depth,
two.
though. You want that for sure.
Yeah, and for a guy who's 6'7", you really can't complain about the size part.
No,
so
for sure.
And he does have actually a blaster of a shot.
Nice.
As I mentioned, Mackenzie Blackwood did sign an extension just before the new year. That was 5 years at 5.25, so $26.25 million contract.
I just checked. He's 7-1-1 with the Avalanche since being traded there.
That's a great record.
That's darn good.
Yeah.
Worked out really well.
Take that anytime. Yeah.
You've got Vegas Bruiser Keegan Kolesar signed a 3-year extension, and that was $2.5 million a year. You have Igor Shesterkin was the big one in the holidays. He signed an 8-year, $92 million deal.
It's a lot of millions.
Yeah, it is.
Highest paid goalie in the league now. Well, next year at 11.5.
Is Bobrovsky still the highest paid goalie?
He's $10 million right now.
Yeah.
So Shesterkin's taking over. The Russians are taking all the goaltender money.
The Russians are coming.
Those Russians.
So let's talk a little bit about, just moving on from signings, let's talk about some of these waivers, because one thing I noticed actually specifically today, if you don't mind me talking about it, Vancouver traded Daniel Sprong to Seattle Kraken for future considerations, which I'm still waiting to hear what those considerations are. But that today, or yesterday specifically, Daniel Sprong got put on waivers by the Seattle Kraken, and today we found out he cleared waivers. So basically, Vancouver just gave up Daniel Sprong for whatever they decide to give us, but pretty much nothing on Seattle's side, right? Like they cost money for them.
Wonder why they'd waive him.
Okay, so I know exactly why they would waive him. They would waive him because ultimately the guy is nothing but offense. He does not bring defense at all. So, and this is something we knew going into this season as Canuck fans when they signed him. He got like 10 games with Vancouver and then they traded him because he just could not fall under that defensive structure. And maybe that's something that hurt Vancouver in the long run, but he did score Vancouver's first goal of the year this year. So it's kind of interesting to see that stuff happen.
Yeah, I was quite surprised to see that he got sent down to be honest. Arthur Kaliev, Los Angeles Kings, was put on waivers a few days ago and then claimed by the Rangers.
I knew he was going to be claimed by somebody.
Yeah, lots of talent there. He was the second pick in the second round of the 2019 draft. Lots of talent there. After giving up Kakko, you might as well try to see if someone else can fill those shoes.
That's
too.
right.
So
that's right. And he's got a lot of upside, and he doesn't make a lot of money either, which is kind of a big bonus there.
You've got the defenseman carousel in Utah for the claims and waivers that they've done with some of the defensemen. Not big names, but Dakota Mermis was a player that Toronto had put on waivers back in December. The Utah Hockey Club had picked him up. He played a few games, got put back on waivers, got re-picked up by the Leafs, and then the Hockey Club had to pick up Nick DeSimone from the New Jersey Devils.
I think Sean Durzee's ready to come back. I think that's one of the reasons they're making some transactions.
That makes sense.
Because he can be a pretty high impact player in your lineup. Top
Jersey
four
for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Jesse Puljujarvi was put on waivers at the end of the year.
I just laugh. Okay, I just laugh because no disrespect to him, but with Edmonton and everything that whatever they thought about him, I watched him play as an Oiler, and I just this guy's got nothing. I don't understand what happened to him in terms of being able to play in this league, because he was a good player. Highly touted coming into the NHL, and then just all of a sudden dropped off the planet. I don't know.
He had a fantastic World Juniors draft here, so it's understandable why he was definitely given the look, and the spot where he was drafted. Just I don't know, maybe it's a development thing.
He's been given plenty of opportunity around the league.
He has,
I think he's about to play for his 4th or 5th team now.
Yeah,
and he's 26, 27 years old.
still young. Yeah.
Sometimes it can be the coach that you have. It can be the training staff. It could be a number of things. And for whatever reason, I think the talent is there, but just the mental game just can't find itself. I don't know. It's hard to say with him. Tyler Johnson had been put on waivers just before Christmas and then had his contract terminated by the Bruins.
Yeah.
He only played a few games with them, so it was kind of weird to see them sign him and then just be like, hey, get out of here.
Always will be remembered. Him and Sprong are actually very similar, but just speedy forwards, right? And maybe that's the same thing. Maybe it's the same thing with Sprong. It's just that they don't have the defensive prowess to be able to play two ways, right?
Well, and it's, obviously they were trying to, I think, clear space and room for having picked up Oliver Wahlstrom from the Islanders, because the Islanders had put him on waivers in the middle of December, and Boston was, I guess my understanding, the only team to put a claim in on him, which was interesting.
I'd be curious to find out how many teams put a claim on Kaliev.
Yeah,
like other than New York.
I'd be curious for them to release the results of every team placing a bid or whatever it is to try to pick up a player on waivers, just to see, because I don't know. I mean, actually, I don't even know if they can place a bid until it gets to their turn.
Maybe, yeah.
Right? Because it goes by the order of the standings.
That's right.
So, but I guess I don't even know what I'm talking about. But there's got to be some kind of list where I wish I could have gotten that player.
It would just be entertaining to see, like, if your team is thinking the same way you are, right?
Yeah.
Like, where you're like, man, they should claim that guy. Is my team thinking the same exact thing? Because I think of, like, I don't know if you saw. It was a couple weeks ago, Roberto Luongo did an interview with somebody, I think it was Spittin' Chicklets, where he had said something about getting offer sheeted. Like, when he first signed his deal with Vancouver, the very first deal he signed with Vancouver, he was apparently offer sheeted, but he turned it down. So nobody knew about it, because when he turns it down, then it's not news, right? So hearing that, you're just kind of like, wow, like, what could have happened? It's just interesting when you think about all the things that could have happened and didn't.
Yeah, it's very strange, some of the stuff that happens in the league in terms of player movement and stuff. There were two former Leafs that were put on waivers over December as well. Pierre Engvall, who signed a 7-year extension with the Islanders, $3 million a year. He got put on waivers. He cleared, but he's actually been playing on the team since having gone on waivers. And then Travis Dermott, who was picked in the second round by the Leafs in his draft, was claimed by the Minnesota Wild, I'm assuming as part of the whole moving Damon Hunt out and needing a defenseman to break.
I liked Dermott in Vancouver when Vancouver picked him up from Toronto. But I know that when he left Vancouver to go to, what was it, Arizona?
Arizona, yeah.
I felt like he kind of fell off a little bit defensively, and I thought that was his strong point, was just he was a good defensive defenseman,
I think where he lacks is the size. For the game that he wants to play, it's just not there. And then I think he sort of tries to do too much offensively to make up for it and doesn't quite have that skill level either. Mm-hmm. He's kind of in the middle of both. And he's going to be your 6, 7, 8 defenseman, right? Yeah. They had high hopes for him. His skating's there. That's one thing that you got to say is never going to lack with Dermott, is his skating.
He might have struggled the most puck moving more than anything.
That first pass,
And I think that's where most teams expect him to do well, and unfortunately, he couldn't bring it there.
He was a bit of a turnover machine in Toronto. That was a big problem.
Yeah, had the foot speed, but just not the hockey sense. It seemed to just not work for him.
Mm-hmm. Well, boys, I think that's definitely a lot of interesting moves and trades and signings, like lots of transactions that went down in the NHL. But let me tell you something. Over the past couple of weeks during the holiday break, we'll call it, I've kind of went down a few rabbit holes. And I know we're all guilty of that sometimes when we watch YouTube or we watch, documentaries or something, and it makes you kind of go down rabbit holes. The rabbit hole I went down, I watched this interesting video on YouTube talking about curses, specifically team curses. Let me ask you a question. Do you believe in team curses? I'll give you an example. You've heard of the curse of the Bambino.
I have.
You've heard of, the what's the one for is the Bambino the New York Yankees one, right?
The Boston Red Sox.
So the Boston Red Sox one. Didn't the Yankees have a curse too? There was a curse the Cubs had a curse. What was the Chicago Cubs curse? It's just that they hadn't won in 100 years.
You might be thinking of the White Sox. You might be thinking of the Chicago White Sox.
I know the Cubs had a curse too, though, right?
Because
They had one for a long time.
Yeah, the White Sox one was the Black Sox scandal in 1919.
Right.
And then they didn't even reach a World Series final until 1959.
Okay, so...
And then a championship in 05.
Well, there you go. So let me ask you guys this. Being sports fans, being logical thinkers, most people would be like, curses, they're not a thing. But let me ask you a question. We're all three fans of hockey teams in Canada. Do you guys believe in curses?
No.
I find that hard to believe.
I'm pretty serious.
Yeah.
I don't. Do I say it out loud sometimes and go, "Oh, my team is cursed"?
Yeah.
Like, of course. And you kind of think like something's going on, but if I were to be honest about it, no, I don't. I don't believe genuinely in curses.
Fair enough. What about you, Paul?
I think there's happenstances and situations that certainly seem to replay themselves with teams or with players. Could you call it a curse? Yeah, I'm not necessarily a voodoo guy or anything like that, but could you call it a curse? You probably could, but I just maybe it's the energy around a team. Hard to say, but certainly I can see things that have happened with the Leafs that I could say are kind of like almost like a curse. So
yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It all depends on, like, this is my perspective. It all depends on the way you look at what a curse is specifically. Now, everyone can say, "Oh, the refs are against us. Oh, the league is against Canadian teams." Blah 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 blah. But I firmly believe that my team, the Vancouver Canucks, are cursed only because of their own actions. So I look back to when John McCaw and Orca Bay took over the Vancouver Canucks, and then things that happened after all of that went down. To me, that was the curse in itself. That the way the McCaws took over the team, changed the logo to a whale, became the Orca Bay Vancouver Canucks. To me, that cursed the team for hopefully not that long. I mean, we're going on 30 years now. I'm pretty sure it was 1995, so 30 years ago. The Vancouver Canucks switched over to the Orca Bay Vancouver Canucks, changed it to an Orca logo, and look at where we're at now, 30 years later. Still no Vancouver Canucks Stanley Cup champions. Still thinking about all of those poor mistakes we made in the past, signing players like Mark Messier. There's a whole story.
Terrible player. How could you make that sign?
You laugh. But I guarantee you every single Canuck fan would say, we wish we never made that sign.
Is that right, eh?
100%.
Yeah.
Do you know the story behind all of that, by the way?
I know nothing about it. No. Hold on. I just want to say something real quick. Are you telling me that 1995 was 30 years ago, Joe? I mean, I did go to school, but I also don't want to say that that's true. I really don't.
1995, believe it or not, was 30 years ago.
27,
30 years ago,
28, 29. Oh, my God.
30 years ago today was January 1995. So, no, but here's the thing. The thing about Mark Messier, that a lot of people outside of the Vancouver franchise don't know, is that Mark Messier signed with Vancouver because Vancouver couldn't get Wayne Gretzky. They almost had Wayne Gretzky, which you might not know about, but Wayne Gretzky had a deal to sign with Vancouver. But what happened was that there was some sort of stipulation where he needed to wait till the next day to make his decision because he had to talk it over with his family. And when the owner got wind of this, either the owner or... Yeah, it was the owner, because what happened was the GM at the time basically said to the owner, he's got to wait till the morning because he's got to talk to his family about it. The owner said, you tell him, he either signs it now or doesn't sign it at all. Didn't sign the contract. He ended up signing with the Rangers. Then they had to go and get Mark Messier. So they were so hung up on getting Mark Messier, the guy who won the Stanley Cup against them in 1994, that they ended up bringing back Mike Keenan, who coached the New York Rangers in 1994, to win the Stanley Cup against Vancouver, which again was another step towards the curse. So, again, going down a huge rabbit hole as a Canuck fan, it's a dangerous thing to do. I don't recommend it. But that's where I look to the audience and I say, like, are we cursed for these decisions we've made? And I mean, you might say, well, that was 30 years ago, so like really it's not that big of a deal. But think of all the little things that have happened since that point, and you can almost pinpoint it to those moments.
So now I gotta be devil's advocate here. And now, do you think your team is cursed because they haven't won a Stanley Cup?
No, I think they're cursed because they can't seem to maintain consistency.
Okay.
So I look at last year for the Vancouver Canucks, and I think, okay, they were really good last year. They were one of the best teams in the league last year. And all of a sudden, they come back this year, and now they're kind of mid-teams. They're a mid-team. That being said, it's only January. They could turn it around. They might make a couple of trades and get some players, blah, blah, blah. That would be wonderful if that could happen. However, I'm looking at their entire history from this moment to that moment. And to me, that's what it seems like. It's just, and I'm not saying that we're cursed, by the way. I should point out, I don't necessarily believe in curses. It's a really interesting talking point because I know other fans of other teams can say the same thing about their franchises. And they can say things like, if this never happened, we would have won that year. Or if this never happened, we would have won that year, et cetera, right? So it's kind of interesting to look back and think like, did that one bad decision ruin the franchise for so many years? Like what can they do? What can Vancouver do to actually put themselves in that conversation, and what would have happened if they did sign Gretzky? Maybe we would have won the championship at some point.
Yeah, I have to, I look at the Canucks, I look at, because the Canucks obviously haven't won since coming in during expansion. The Leafs haven't won since the year before expansion.
There you go.
Which was 1967.
When there was less teams in the league, right?
And the Canucks were actually the second expansion. That's right.
Yeah,
the first,
that's right. Not even
first
the first
year, right?
Yeah. A lot of I guess older Leafs fans would blame that on Harold Ballard. Apparently, he was just absolutely one of the worst GMs and representative of the Maple Leafs for his tenure with them. Some of the worst things that he was known for, the hockey writers wrote about this, is that he was renowned for his poor financial decisions and mismanagement of the team's resources. He was notorious for mistreating the players. He often berated them, underpaid them, the whole works. And it created quite a hostile environment. He was known for not necessarily having the greatest words coming out of his mouth. Kind of a racist, using the bad words that go with being racist.
That's right. I mean, that I've heard of that specifically, not just with the Leafs, but with other teams too, around the league in using those bad words, even as recent as, 2019, 2020. Like, I've heard of those things. Not stipulating anything, but, just I've heard those stories. And old time hockey does have that kind of thing with it, right? That just sort of whatever you feel like saying, you say, and I'm glad that it's kind of moving on from there just for that mentality. But yeah, definitely I can see how that would be bad for your kind of label, right?
Well, I think of the Akeem Aliu situation with
that's right.
The Calgary
That's what
coach.
I was thinking of. Yeah.
I can't remember the coach's name, unfortunately.
Well, I know there was a similar situation, I believe, in Chicago with the mustache, Quenneville.
Yes,
with Joel Quenneville. I don't want to stipulate anything about Joel Quenneville, but just from what I've heard in the media and stuff like that, I've heard that he was kind of like that, where he just felt like he could say whatever he wanted.
Well, he got it suspended
right.
second to last year for like grabbing his junk,
yeah,
and like kind of making a gesture towards the referee. I think he got suspended for like 5 games or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
old school hockey.
Kind of crazy what some coaches will do. I remember Jim Playfair, the coach of the Flames, ripping his shirt open and throwing the hockey bench onto the ice.
Oh my God, I remember that.
And wasn't that the same tirade that he like broke 4 hockey sticks and like emptied the bin into the ice?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's classic.
That is definitely anger management classes.
Yeah.
Another thing about Harold Ballard, and certainly I think kind of left his stain and reputation on the team, was that he was a convicted criminal. He got charged with fraud and theft back in 1978, and had to do with his business dealings with Maple Leafs Gardens.
Well, maybe he should run for president.
And you kind of have to look kind of sad in terms of the Leafs, in terms of how he alienated. Like David Keon was at the time one of their greatest players. Same with Daryl Sittler and Landon McDonald, and he traded all of them for basically nothing. Kind of moves, and that put the team back like decades, I would say.
So Ballard used to get into it apparently quite badly with Alan Eagleson, who was the the president of the NHLPA and was for a long, long time. And he was also well known for kind of making a good relationship with Daryl Sittler when he was with Toronto. And then as Sittler became more prominent in the NHLPA, they ended up like at odds with each other, like completely butting heads, and then like the relationship went completely sour.
Wow.
And again, a lot of it has to do with just like the arrogance and attitude of Harold Ballard, right?
Yeah, so Rick Vive was quoted saying that, I don't think he gave a shit about the team. I really don't. All he cared about was having people in the seats and making money. I don't think he cared if we won the Stanley Cup. I really don't. And it's kind of been reflective of the team. It's not necessarily that I don't think that, if you look at least the team over the last 30 years, doesn't care about the Stanley Cup, but that kind of attitude, that presence, that kind of filtered after they last won the Cup, kind of lasted for those decades, and it very well felt like that the Stanley Cup wasn't important. It was about making money.
It hurts the team longer, when you deal with those and you just let it happen and let it keep happening. I mean, for those out there who are listening, I don't necessarily believe a curse is a thing. However, I mean, you can look at it like I said, bad decisions that affect the team for long periods of time, and then they can't recover from those bad decisions. Vancouver picking up, Jim Benning as their GM, we thought we were going to be lucky because this guy does an amazing job at finding, talent to draft, which is true. He drafted really well, but he could not find talent, professional scouting, to save his life. It's like every signing he made, every trade he made was the worst possible trade for the team, and it just kept them in the basement for a long time.
Drafted well.
Drafted very well. Yeah, like I said, I mean, picking up Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes and Brock Besser, and those are great decisions. But he also picked up Olli Juolevi, which was probably the worst decision you could make, considering Matthew Tkachuk was on the board.
So was that the fourth pick?
Yeah, fifth pick. Fifth overall.
Right.
Yeah, fifth overall.
Man.
It's because they needed a defenseman. They needed desperately a defenseman. It was before Quinn Hughes, I'm pretty sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. But, it's those bad decisions that just keep happening to the team that you just think, we're never going to win. I've seen, Canuck media literally say, I don't know if these guys are ever going to win a cup in my lifetime. And these are people who are, my age or a little bit older saying these things. And I'm just like, that's scary to think about. You want to be able to celebrate your team one day winning the cup. But boys, it's been 30 years since a Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup.
32.
Yeah.
We just did the math.
Yeah. Well, 33 this year.
I guess it will be, yeah.
33 this year. The last time a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup was 1993.
Yeah, so 32.
32. Yeah. I do math well. But 1993, that's a long-ass time.
Yeah.
Are we ever going to see that? Are all Canadian teams cursed? Are we just cursed for being in Canada?
Gets tossed around. Can you guys think of any other, specific curses in the NHL that get talked about quite a bit? There's one that sticks out for me.
Buffalo Sabres. Buffalo Sabres. I mean,
what about just not a specific team, but just a general curse?
I might need more context.
So there's something that always is classed as a curse in the NHL, and it's about where they are in the standings.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Do you mind if I say it? The team that wins the President's Trophy
exactly.
Almost never wins the Stanley Cup. It does happen, but very, very rarely.
Yeah, and they always say that that's a curse on the team that wins the President's Trophy.
Yeah,
best team in the league, right?
And think about how excited they are to win that trophy. You've won the regular season, best most points in the regular season at the end of it. But yeah, it's you work so hard to get to that point, and then you don't have anything left to give in the playoffs. Vancouver won the President's Trophy in 2011 and 2012, both years. They went to the Stanley Cup final in 2011, and when they did it again in 2012, I was excited, thinking, here's our chance to go back. They ended up losing in the first round of the LA Kings, who did end up winning the Stanley Cup. So
yeah. Those were some pretty big years if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan. Disappointing, unfortunately, but yeah.
I mean,
we know all about that.
Again, I think about, and I'm an emotional guy, but I think about crying seeing them not win that Stanley Cup in 2011 and just being like, it's never going to happen. Like, you get your hopes up, and then
I'll back you up on that. Like, the first time Austin Matthews scored 50 goals, I started crying.
Yeah.
Tiff looks at me, she goes, "Are you okay? That's a good thing." I'm like, honestly, in my lifetime, as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, I have not seen a 50-goal score.
Yeah.
I have just hadn't, right?
And that reminds me of another curse for Vancouver with Pavel Bure. Pavel Bure was the best points getter on the team at the point that he was on the team. But then when he wanted to leave, it was because of Mike Keenan. He wanted to leave. So again, are we cursed because we made those decisions? It's just like you can't have a good thing, And it's definitely, I think what it says more than anything is that it is painful being a hockey fan, specifically in Canada. I don't know about the US. I'm sure it is if you're a diehard fan, but it is painful being a hockey fan in Canada. So, we talked a little bit about curses a little bit with hockey, but we also mentioned baseball with curses. Let's talk a little bit about some of the moves going on in baseball, as it is the off season right now.
Yeah, well, I'll just highlight kind of the Canadian side of things with the Blue Jays, obviously being the only team from here. And some notable stuff with them. They made a couple of trades in the offseason that I think are going to help them. They still got a lot of work to do, and their front office is struggling. They really are. I'll be as positive as I can about it. I think they're trying to make moves. It's not translating. Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with the taxes in Canada. It's cold as hell up here compared to, a lot of the places in the United States. It's not necessarily a destination. You only have the one team. Who knows what the reason being, but it seems that the destination city of Toronto has gone way down the list in the MLB, and I would say even as little as 6 or 7 years ago, it was one of the hot spots to go for free agents, right? So, but the big thing with them is they have their franchise player unsigned, Vladdy Guerrero Jr., and apparently they're about $100 million apart.
Oh wow!
On what? And we're not talking, obviously not a season. This is over the stretch of the contract, which will probably be a 15-year deal, I think, is the max that he can sign. But having said that, we also did just get news before the podcast recording today that he avoided arbitration and did sign a 1-year deal with the Jays for $28.5 million per season. And I guess maybe it's him saying, you know what? Okay, I'll give you one more year, and I'm going to show you how much I'm worth.
I think more than anything, too, it also shows that he wants to play in Toronto.
He's always said that.
Yeah.
He's always been, right from when he was drafted by Toronto and developed in their system, he loves Toronto. He loves being there.
I'm a firm believer that if a player signs a short-term deal in a city to stay in that city, they want to be there. And, it's unfortunate that the Blue Jays couldn't kind of work something out to keep him there longer term, but it's great that at least he's showing that he wants to stay there. It gives him a chance to sort of talk it over the next year and kind of get something good done.
Yeah, and Paul, as a bit more of a baseball fan, I would say, than Joe at this current state, do you have any thoughts about why the Jays have so much trouble signing players? Do you what's going on behind the scenes that we just, obviously we don't know, but
I think the Canadian dollar really plays its part in that, and the taxes. If you look at all the players that the Jays have been in on, Corbin Burns, Juan Soto, Alex Bregman, we're talking about right now, Anthony Santander, Teoscar Hernandez. The Jays are in on them, and if you look at Shohei Ohtani from the previous year as well, they're in on them, and I believe it's being used as leverage to drive the price up, so that, like I said, the team that these players actually want to go to will give that money, because they know that if they sign the same money in Toronto, yes, it's worth $700 million US, but you get taxed and you get the value of our Canadian dollar going against that, and it drops the cost of that
Almost
way
half,
down.
right?
So I think that plays a huge part. You look at somebody like Vladimir Guerrero. Like I'm fine with an arbitration 1 year, $28 million, but this is the face of your franchise. Like you just had Juan Soto sign a 15-year contract, and he's around the same age.
Bo Bichette's gone too, right?
He's still here.
Is he still with them?
Yeah,
I know they were talking
year.
about.
One
Oh,
more
okay,
year.
I see. I saw a report that there was a chance he was going to go, or they were going to trade him, or something.
Possibly that, yeah.
Which is like sad when you consider like talk about the face of your franchise, but if you don't have any of these good players left, what are you going to do?
Well, and again, like I said, Juan Soto just signed a 15-year deal. Vlad's around the same age. Like, get the deal done. He's the face of your franchise. Yeah. You can rebuild, fine, whatever, but honestly, you still need to be competitive to bring fans into the stands. And if you have no competitiveness at all, I can't imagine Rogers to be very happy about that. They're willing to spend.
Well, let's think about it this way. When Vladdy first started playing regularly with the team, they literally hired a Hispanic, like a Spanish-speaking manager, so that he could help. I mean, there were more than just Vladdy that didn't speak English very well on the team, but they purposely hired a manager that spoke Spanish so that he could communicate with them to develop these players. So it shows you how much they thought of Vladdy as a starting point, and then other Latin players as well.
And the players in free agency are getting taken now. Like the big ones have been signed: Juan Soto, Corbin Burns. Some of the bigger names. Justin Verlander just signed with the Giants, and the Giants have been in a lot of free agents. As I said, Teoscar re-signed with Los Angeles. Corbin Burns went back home to the D-backs. You're seeing
the D what?
The D-backs.
I might have misheard you there.
Diamondbacks.
What did you call me?
Those bunch of D-backs.
And again, these are all players that there's been some interest from the Blue Jays on, and they're already leaving. So you're kind of starting to run out of time.
It's got to be frustrating as a Blue Jays fan, kind of hearing that they're interested in this player and interested in that player and interested in this player, and then don't sign them.
Yeah,
like especially big name players when you think like, oh, this is a chance to really improve our team, and then they don't sign the guy.
Well, and, the big one was Juan Soto this offseason. I'm kind of ticked with the offer that they gave Juan Soto. It was let out that Toronto only offered $600 million for 15 years. He signed for $800 million in the Mets. Like, you're supposed to be part of the finalists. You were never even in it.
I wonder if any of that. I mean, this is just my thought, but like, I wonder if any of that has to do with the person making the negotiations with that player's agent. Like, in the NHL, every team has sort of a cap specialist, and they have somebody to do the negotiations on behalf of the manager and things like that. I wonder, if that has anything to do with that person on the Blue Jays, front office that's communicating with the agent, and just they're not doing a good enough job showing interest in that player. Like, are they kind of playing the hard to get on their end to the player, and then the player's like, oh, they're not interested, I'll just go somewhere else?
I think based on what we know and can see through the media, the Jays front office, I would say, is a little bit more passive.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's
things.
actually what I mean. Like, are they being too passive so that they aren't showing the player or the agent that they really want him on their team?
I think you can agree with me. I think that's how we feel as Jays fans.
Yeah.
But to your point, Paul, about Alex Bregman, he's kind of the next hot rumor name that the Jays are trying to sign. But I'm interested to see what happens with it, because fantastic player, great hitter, great fielder, World Series champion. But what does that mean for current players on the Jays? So if they sign Bregman, he's going to bring 35 home runs, 100 RBI, a 290 batting average, 850 OPS, and that's fine. But at the expense of what? Now, Ernie Clement was a finalist for the Gold Glove at third base. He wasn't there with the bat, but he was a finalist for the Gold Glove on a hot corner, on a team where the third base position was really up in the air. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa played some games. Vladdy Guerrero played a few games at third base. But the only guy that was really consistent through the season was Ernie Clement. Alex Bregman's a third baseman. Mm-hmm. When he's not playing third, he's playing shortstop. Now that means he's stepping on Bo Bichette's toes, which is another story in Toronto. What's happening with Bo Bichette? Is he signing? Are they going to trade him? He had a terrible year offensively. He had some injuries with his heel and his foot and his calf, and he was a mess this year. It was a terrible season for him. And the year before that, he was second in the league in hits. So, I mean, now you bring in a player like Bregman, an impact player, whose toes is he stepping on, right? And he wants $200 million. So we're not talking about chump change. And then, like, there's so much going on. And then a player like Pete Alonso, same thing. He wants a $200 million paycheck. Well, what's he going to do? You're going to pay $200 million for the guy to be a DH? Vlad Guerrero's your first baseman. Ideally. You'll see where that goes, but you know what I mean? Because Pete Alonso's a first baseman. So, I mean, yeah, they'll play. Vladdy's not going to play 162 games at first, but how many games is Alonso going to play at first compared to just being a DH? So there's so many things. Like, yeah, these names are hot. They're great. They're going to bring you power. They're going to bring you batting average. They're going to bring you runs. But at the expense of what?
Yeah.
I'll never complain about depth. So, I know that Ernie Clement, as you mentioned, was a finalist for the Gold Glove, but honestly, I'm in the business of our team winning games, and if bringing in a Bregman and an Alonso and Anthony Santander, any of those kind of players that will help get them over the hump and stop being below 500 like they've been pretty much the last 2 years. I'm all for it. I want to see them win, and the way that this team's being run right now, and the fact that there's been really no substantial move besides the Jimenez deal, it's 2 years of disappointment so far with the offseason.
I agree.
It's tough, you want so much for your team to be, improved for the following year, but then they don't do a whole lot of things. Then you kind of get frustrated. I can imagine Blue Jays fans are definitely, upset with the way things have gone over the last little while.
And I think, in a way, we've been content with the result. I would say maybe not this prior season because of the pitching depth that they had at the start of the year. But I would say you can understand why they ended up not doing so well. The frustration now comes with the lack of improvement to the team with allegedly the financial flexibility to do so.
Yeah.
That's where, for me, that's where the frustration is the inability or lack thereof ability to sign players and bring them in and be impact players and be an impactful team when the resources appear to be there. So.
So the off season, I mean, it's obviously still happening. The off season's still going on, but there's still a little bit of time left to make something happen.
I mean, having said that, I think pitchers report at the end of February, pitchers and catchers. So
yes,
it's not that far away.
End of February, and then you've got spring baseball in March, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Not a lot of time to make things happen, but maybe the team itself is kind of on the mindset of let's keep things, fairly similar, and maybe our luck will turn around with players like Bo Bichette and Vladdy and things like that. So you just never know. Maybe this is the year. I don't know.
We need to see some action on their side.
Yeah, action. That's right. Speaking of action, gentlemen, we are big movie fans, as the audience already knows. But one thing they also know is that we're also big action fans. We love to watch action movies. Explosions, gunfights, chases, like you name it, and we love it.
Karate kicks.
Karate kicks. And especially like those highs and lows of watching a bad guy get revenged on, right? So let's talk a little bit about some of our favorite action stars. We've got all sorts of people to kind of go from here, but we all kind of grew up with similar action stars. So let's talk a little bit about some of our favorite action stars. Rather than naming a list, let's just talk about some and then kind of see what we come up with. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, if we're looking at probably some of the more well-known ones, you probably look at a lot of the ones that were in the Expendable movies. So you're looking at Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sly Stallone, Bruce Willis, some of the three big threes. What are some of your thoughts on some of the films that they were all three of them that were involved in?
Well, I think at that point the Expendables became like an all-star game.
Yeah, literally.
Basically,
well, I think that was kind of the point.
The point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Kurt Russell was in there at one point, and Mel Gibson came in towards the end of the series as well. Van Damme, yeah. So I mean, they're touching on everything.
Also, Chuck Norris.
Yeah. The
Right?
action star.
And,
I mean, Chuck Norris, man.
and they left out one of my favorites, but we'll touch on it at some point during this conversation.
There's always Expendables 5. But yeah, no, I grew up with Stallone and Schwarzenegger and those guys and Van Damme for that matter, watching their movies religiously. My favorite movie of all time, as you guys know, is Commando, and that's a Schwarzenegger movie, and it's literally full of one-liners, and that's why I love it so much, because ultimately it's just nothing but one-liner after one-liner, and they're all memorable, and you can quote them every time, any chance you get.
We probably will during this episode.
We will, and we always do. But there are plenty of other action stars who I enjoy watching as well, especially when it comes to the martial arts genre. I think of Bruce Lee, obviously, like the king of martial arts, and then you've got like Jet Li, then Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan was a big one for me.
Yeah,
because,
and the one thing, if I were to compare kind of the two, Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, is that Bruce Lee had the moves, but Jackie Chan had like the almost like it became a dance with him, like he wasn't just throwing punches and throwing kicks and making noise. He was diving and using objects to help with the people he's fighting and stuff, and it became an art form.
Do you remember at all watching Jackie Chan flicks in specifically the 90s? I know he did a lot over in China and whatnot during the 80s, a lot of dubbed movies, things like that. I've seen those too. But in the 90s was kind of his rise, I would say. And I found for me that almost every movie that I watched with him in it, I almost looked forward to the end of the movie more than the entirety of the movie itself, because then it shows you like the making of the stunts and the preparation and how he would do his own stunts and how he would hurt himself constantly. Yeah. Like Rumble in the Bronx is the one that sticks out for me.
Yeah.
The scene where he jumps off the pillar onto the hovercraft, breaks his ankle.
Yeah.
And then they still had to finish the movie.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And I think I would argue that's inspiration for somebody like Tom Cruise, right, who does his own stunts as well. You learn from somebody like Jackie Chan who literally gives it his all when he's doing these movies. And that's something as an actor, like I look up to that more than anything.
Well, we talk about Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. Like they were in a film together. They were in the film Fist of Fury back in 1972.
Yes, Fist of Fury.
So, it's one of those things where Jackie Chan does credit Bruce Lee a lot for his focus on martial arts for the films and stuff like that. So the fact that he was actually able to work together with Bruce Lee, obviously that was an inspiration for him. If you're looking at any of the martial arts action stars now, I wouldn't doubt that they would say that Jackie Chan is their inspiration for having got into the film industry. If you're watching movies like Rumble in the Bronx, my favorite Jackie Chan film besides the Rush Hour films to this day is Who Am I? And it's because the two fight scenes in that were so unique. One guy was all about being an expert at kicks. The other guy was an expert at punches, and it was cool to see the dynamic of those fight scenes between the two antagonists and Jackie Chan in that film.
Absolutely. Mine, for me, was probably Drunken Master. I watched it, and it's a dub movie, but I watched it with an old roommate of mine, and he introduced it to me, and I was just like, wow, the moves, the form that he presents is just so cool to watch, and he can make it look so so easy and flawless. But I'm sure it's take after take after take.
One final point on Jackie Chan. Did you guys know that he also has recorded 12 studio albums?
I did not know that. I had no idea.
He's a singer in China.
That's hilarious.
2018 was the last album that he released.
Wow. Yeah, it's so funny. For me, I think more than anything, when I think of the action genre, for me, martial arts plays a huge part. I just grew up watching like Van Damme movies and just sort of watching. My favorite Van Damme movie is I would kind of put it between like Bloodsport and Time Cop. Those are probably my two. But it's a great movie, and I enjoyed Van Damme in it. And it's cheesy as all hell, too, which is the best part. But good martial arts in it.
I'm curious, Paul, what's your favorite Van Damme movie?
And you can't say Street Fighter.
Damn. 31 years ago.
Yeah. Probably Universal Soldier.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I like that, too.
I didn't expect that from you. Good
It would have been Time Cop, but
I'm going to guess yours. Sudden Death.
No, but that is up there.
Yeah.
I think the reason it's not my favorite is because
it's the Penguins.
maybe, yeah. It's the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
No, I think it's more about the fact that he's not really an action star in that movie. He's not that dominant force whereas in some of his movies, that's the whole point. That's his character.
Yeah.
He's just kind of this fireman who happens to know a bit of karate and then, saves his kids, right? But my favorite is Double Impact.
Oh yeah, Double Impact.
I really like that one.
Well, I mean, he played two characters in the movie, right?
Yeah.
And it's pretty epic, actually. I do love that movie too, actually. Yeah, there's a list of them, but for sure.
I want to ask you guys just a couple that are like a little far down the list, but kind of like multi-genre guys, but still did really, really well in action specifically.
Okay.
And I just wanted to see where you guys kind of maybe rank them in your, say, top 10, or even not even top 10, but like where would you rank them out of 10 on an action scale? And I'll say like a guy like Will Smith.
On an action scale, I mean, I really loved probably his of his movies. My favorite is probably Independence Day, and then after that, probably Men in Black. Like I can't think of any other. I mean, I never saw Ali, so that's on me. But those are probably the two favorite that I can think of.
I would concur on that.
The Bad Boys series for me, I think.
Oh yeah, Bad Boys.
I would say even maybe 1 and 2.
To be fair, I haven't seen the new Bad Boys, the newest one, and I haven't seen the one before it either.
Right, fair enough. What about a guy like John Travolta?
I don't consider him an action star, but I get like he was in Face Off, probably the best action movie of his.
Broken Arrow, Basic,
Broken Arrow, yeah.
General's Daughter.
I never saw General's Daughter. And do you say Basic was another one?
Basic was another
one. I don't
one.
think I saw that one either.
That's a good one, yeah.
He was in Die Hard, so that means something.
Travolta was in Die Hard?
Pretty sure it was Travolta, yeah.
Was he?
No. I thought you said Die Hard.
Not Die Hard, Die Hart.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
That's why I chuckled, because
that's the Die Hard is the one with Kevin Hart, right?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't seen that, but I would like to because I love Kevin Hart.
Apparently, that's an action movie.
Yes.
So.
Well,
last one, Matt Damon.
I love Matt Damon. He I mean, the Bourne movies are some of my favorite kind of action movies, right? Like with for me it's a combination of both the fighting and also kind of the story, the spy. I'm a big spy guy. Like I love those spy movies. And yeah, like throw in the action there, you've got it for me. I'm hooked right away.
I think it's only the Bourne movies that really kind of make him that action star. He's really more known for his dramatic roles or his at least his roles where his character stands out, like in The Martian.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't call The Martian an action movie, no. but there's action in it, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the other action stars that are out there. I mean, I talked a little bit about Tom Cruise. There's a lot of great movies that he puts out there in the action genre. Here's the interesting fact about Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise, he's like 5'6", okay? So the guy's like super short. But every time he's in he's Brandon's height. So but really short guy, but he portrays these tough characters, right? It's always interesting to sort of see that. But he pulls it off and I think a lot of it is because of the way they film the movies, right? They'll lift him up on an apple box to make him look taller and stuff like that. But he does a really good job, and the benefit with him, and I will give him credit for this, is the fact that he does his own stunts. So he goes out there and does a Mission Impossible movie. The guy's in his like 50s and 60s now. I think he's almost 60 years old, and he's riding planes, hooked up to planes and flying on the outside of them and stuff. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, that's not something normally you'll see for almost any other actor in Hollywood. There are ones that do their own stunts, but it's kind of rare
at that age.
That's why you have stuntmen, right?
Yeah.
To do that, and there's a lot of flack thrown at Tom Cruise. A lot of people don't like him because they think his personality is a little out there.
Yeah, I would agree.
But I tend to love him in his films. I think he's actually quite a good actor. He is somebody that has a lot of charisma in his roles. Even some of the characters that he's kind of characters that he's reportraying again. Like I said, finishing up the Mission Impossible series, having done the most recent Top Gun film. Like it's you would think that, kind of recycling old stuff would be kind of boring to watch, but he's still making it exciting to watch. I am looking forward to the new Mission Impossible, and I really liked Top Gun Maverick.
I'm the same. I agree with you. I think that there are certain characters he probably shouldn't play, and I'll put Reacher out there. I don't think he should have ever played Jack Reacher because he doesn't fit he doesn't fit the portrait of what the character is. Like, Jack Reacher is supposed to be 6'3" tall and big, ripped guy, right? Yeah. Which is, if you've seen the Reacher series, Alan Ritchson, who plays Reacher in the series, he fits that character more. Now, he's only 6'1", I think, but still, he's a bigger guy. He bulked up to play this character, and he does a really good job at portraying the character. It's definitely different than what Tom Cruise brought in the Reacher movies. So I don't think they should have brought him in for that character. I think probably what happened is somebody really wanted Tom Cruise because it's Tom Cruise. He's a name, right? So he did make the money, but he's not right for that character. Now, for the Ethan Hunt character, that's a completely different story. He fits it perfectly.
Yep.
My favorite Tom Cruise role actually isn't an action film, but it's probably one that most people remember him for because he's so ridiculous in it. And it's when he played Les Grossman in Tropic Thunder.
Yeah. That movie is so underrated. So underrated.
It's under my shelf. That's where it is.
Just one more guy that I'm going to mention is Mr. James Bond. Sean Connery. More recently, Daniel Craig. I thought portrayed the character really well. I really am a big fan of the way he kind of brought that martial arts aspect to the character. Whereas Sean Connery's all about, his character is more about the Sean Connery and also Pierce Brosnan. Their characters were more about the gadgets and that kind of spy aspect of it again. So thinking about that spy genre, I'm big on James Bond as well.
I had another one that we haven't mentioned yet that I'm surprised neither of you guys have brought up. Good old Canadian boy, Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
He's done almost exclusively action in the last decade with the John Wicks.
It's true.
But, I mean, one of my favorite movies is Point Break.
Yeah, Point Break.
Matrix. Matrix, Speed, yeah, exactly.
Actually, I'll give you credit for that because definitely Keanu Reeves is... You think of the movies he does, it is very action-based. Like, I can't think of... I mean, I know he's done a few romance films in the past, like the one about... I forget what it's called, but it's the one where the lady put a note in her mailbox, and then it's, he puts a note in the mailbox, but they're in completely different times. Like he's in the future or something, and she's in the past.
Oh, I don't recognize that one.
Yeah. It's terrible, but he's in it, but he is mainly an action star for sure, and most of his movies have been really awesome. I can't think of a movie of his that I haven't liked. I'm sure people out there can point out like the specific Matrix movie they don't like or whatever, but I've liked the movies he's done. I won't necessarily say he's one of my favorite actors per se. Like I don't think he brings anything to me that like kind of makes me think he's a really good actor.
He's an awkward guy. Like the way he even gives off his lines,
he's kind of always the same.
Just kind of goofy, in a way.
But it's funny.
Super intelligent though.
It's funny. I took my kids to go and see the new Sonic movie a couple weeks ago now, and he plays the sort of, I'll call it a bad guy because he's not actually a bad guy. He's just confused. But he plays the character Shadow, and his voice is so Keanu Reeves, right? Like when you hear it, you're just like, yep, that's Keanu Reeves, all right. And it's just because he's always the same thing, right? But no, I can definitely say that I enjoy the movies he's in. And I mean, a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's the story or whatever, right? But definitely a good choice for sure.
I got to give some love to our female action stars.
Yes.
Ones that come to mind for me are usually Kate Beckinsale for the Underworld series.
Definitely.
I look at Angelina Jolie.
Big time,
Mila Jovovich.
Mia Jovovich.
Chicken is good.
Charlize Theron, they've all done good in either supporting or lead roles.
Now, how about Sigourney Weaver?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
I can't forget Aliens. Right?
Yeah.
Jennifer Garner.
Yeah.
She's in a new movie coming out pretty quick here. Or is it a series? She
Which
plays...
There's one specific Jennifer Garner movie, and trying to remember what the name of it is, but it's her husband and kid get shot down in a like a drive-by or something like that, and she gets injured, and then she fully recovers herself, and she exacts revenge on the people that killed her husband. And
nice.
I cannot remember for the life of me what it's called, but it came out like a couple of years ago.
Electra. She plays Electra.
Oh, Electra, yeah. Oh, you forgot the name of the character.
Oh my god, man! I can see her, but I can't think of the character.
She was just in the Wolverine and Deadpool.
Yeah,
and she was really good too. Actually, like re-portraying that character. I mean, it's been since she played it. It's been like 30 years, probably.
Yeah, that weird kind of film back in, I think it was 2018 or something, like Peppermint. Did you ever see that one?
That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay.
Peppermint.
Okay.
That was the one I was talking about. I couldn't remember the name, but yeah, Peppermint. It's a good movie.
It's good. I enjoyed it. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a big advocate for like female action stars, because I find a lot of times they can do things that male action stars can't.
Yeah.
And I mean what I mean by that is just typically like they can do flips, they can do cool things to make it look really cool and exciting and so I think of somebody who just won a Golden Globe the other day, Zoe Saldana. She's portrayed a few action roles, which is she's done really good at.
Colombiana.
Too. Yeah.
I'm gonna put this out to you guys. Name one action star that you think is overrated.
Yeah, overrated. There's a few.
Overrated by myself or overrated by kind of like society?
I would say your opinion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Opinion.
I can think of one right away, and Brandon won't agree with me. And
I know where this.
You know where this is going.
I do know where this is going.
But I definitely think Steven Seagal is overrated. I've never been a Seagal fan, and actually, it's funny because I got to work in the film industry for a little while, as you guys know. And one funny thing is, when I finished film school, I actually worked on a project film, like an independent film, that happened to be shooting across the road from a Steven Seagal movie. So we were at the Vancouver waterfront, and there was a gun scene, like a gunfight scene. So you could hear all these guns going off in the kind of distance. And I guess during a specific moment where the gun stopped or whatever, they had Seagal's trailer was literally across the street from where I was standing. I was a production assistant, so I was basically doing traffic control. And he comes out of his trailer with two ladies, one of which is holding a script for him, and the other is holding an umbrella for him and feeding him grapes while he's walking. And he's literally not holding anything. He's got hands in his pockets, and he's just walking. And I'm just thinking, what a diva! I couldn't believe it when I'm watching this, right? And then it just, for me, going to film school, this is the reputation Seagal has, because my instructors had all worked in the industry, so they'd worked on movies with Seagal and stuff, right? And so, yeah, they're like, yeah, he's the worst guy to work with. And if you look at any interviews and stuff, and they ask like, who's the worst guy you've ever worked with, it's always Steven Seagal.
Really? Yeah.
There's a story.
If I take that factor out of it, then he's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But
like if you don't know these
for
things,
sure. Yeah.
But it's funny because every time I've ever watched a Seagal movie, I've always thought he's almost, they make it so that he's almost bigger than he is. Like, somebody goes to punch him and he does almost nothing, and it like gets the guy flipped over or whatever. Like, it just feels like minimal effort, and kind of that's his karate style, quote unquote. It's Aikido, which is his karate style, and it's basically like, you throw a punch, I'll grab it with my arm and flip you around.
It's kind of reversal of force.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, that's my overrated guy for sure.
Jason Statham, for me.
Really?
There are movies that I purposely don't watch because he's in them. And I just find he's... Again, I mean, you could say this about any of these guys, really, but it's the same character for me. I think because I grew up with guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sly Stallone, Bruce Willis, Mel Gibson to a certain point, in that action role all the time. You see it. I grew up with it. I enjoyed it. It's kind of what made me an action fan. And then as a kind of a prior action fan, coming and watching like a new age action movie, and he just has that old school action hero in a new movie, and it doesn't jive for me.
Fair enough.
I think there's lots of examples of that, but I just think that his style with the martial arts, it never seems to fully fit with the role that he's playing. I just am fine leaving him off my list.
No, fair enough. That makes sense. It's funny because that's how I feel about, like, the way you feel about Seagal is the way I feel about Statham. I really enjoy his movies, but I can see where you're coming from. Like, I can totally see, because you're right. He does very much play the same character in almost every movie he is. But I think that's the point. There's a market for that, and I think that's why people watch it all the time, because he does have a kind of a kick-ass martial arts style. And rarely is he kind of overwhelmed. You know, this is the kind of thing with the martial arts genre, is like, rarely are they overwhelmed with bad guys that they can't handle themselves, you know? And I feel like that is a hard thing to kind of believe when you watch it. That's why a lot of times you watch it where, like, a guy gets kind of beat up by a bunch of people and he works his way through it, you know? And those are the more believable kind of action genres.
And just on this point alone, I'll just chime in with a guy like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah.
And I found growing up with him the complete opposite. He would get the crap kicked out of him so much that you're like, come on, man, do something.
Lionheart is a perfect example.
Lionheart, yeah. The Quest.
Or even Bloodsport.
Bloodsport, yes.
Funny enough, the thing about The Quest is it was also written by, it was written by Jean-Claude Van Damme, but it was also written by the real Frank Dukes, who is the character, obviously, in Bloodsport.
Right.
The real Frank Dukes wrote Bloodsport and also wrote The Quest. The Quest is just Bloodsport taken in medieval times.
Exactly.
That's literally the point of
it. And I think they're directed by the same guy, too.
It is, yeah.
Yoshi Diamant or whatever it is. Yeah. But I always found that about Jean-Claude Van Damme. Whatever movie he was in, he always seemed to get, like, very, very hurt all the time.
Yeah.
Even in Double Impact, maybe one of his characters gets the crap kicked out of him, right? And you're just like, come on, man. You're supposed to be this big star. Like, do something. Nobody ever hurt Arnold.
That's right.
You could cut his left arm off and he'd come back and kill you.
All right, Paul, what about you?
I'm really not a fan of him as an actor, period, but as an action star, even more so. Ice Cube, to me, is not an action star.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was the lead role for Triple X, the sequel to the one that Vin Diesel did.
I never saw it, by the way.
Oh, it's awful.
But I never saw it because of Ice Cube.
It's because
I'm like,
Ice Cube.
this guy's not
He's
an action star. You're not going to shove him down my throat.
Yeah, he's been put into action roles. And I would say he's overrated for the fact that he's not an actor. He's kind of funny. He was funny in 22 Jump Street, but he's not an actor in my opinion. Like, he's a former rapper.
He was really
and
funny in 22 Jump Street, actually. Yeah.
He's a former rapper. Not that that's an issue. And then you look at 50 Cent. He's actually had a pretty successful career,
and he's a decent actor too.
Yeah. I can't get behind Ice Cube being an action star, and I've seen him in action roles, and like I said, that knowing the same thing, knowing that he was the lead for the Triple X sequel, it got a 4.5 out of 10 on IMDb because it was considered that bad.
Yeah, totally.
And I kind of can't stand the way that he talks, and it really just I don't want to see.
I
him
wonder
in
if
a
they
film.
thought like maybe they would try to push him as an action star because of how he talks.
Yeah,
because he talks hard, right? Like,
yeah,
that's
totally
the point.
does.
Like he's like, you ain't gonna, like that sort of like strong kind of
intimidating.
But he doesn't look intimidating. That's
No.
the problem.
It looks like somebody you'd want to give a hug to.
It's like if Tom Cruise had an intimidating voice, like same thing. 5'6", like come here,
Don't get me wrong. Like, if he's face to face me right now and talking to me that way, I probably
you would be
piss my
intimidated.
pants. But nonetheless, he'll never be an action star to me.
For me, it's tough. It's tough to when I notice that say a movie distributing company or whatever they're called, like a studio, tries to shove a guy down your throat like as this is our star and you will love him. For me, that's frustrating because it's like if it doesn't work once, it's never going to work. So,
is there a single role that he's put his back into?
So. You can do it. Put your back into.
You gotta find a spot to edit that in, Joe.
Oh my god. So for me, like, I find that a lot of the older actors, people who are older in age, they tend to get a little bit less credit as an action star. And I think of guys like, Denzel Washington, who's been in a million action movies. I think back to like one of my favorite action movies of his is with Russell Crowe, who's another good action star or action actor. It's called Virtuosity, yeah, and it's a wonderful movie. It actually introduced the UFC to me because they were doing there's a specific scene where they kind of fight or they run through a UFC fight. And I was like, hey, that's the UFC. So my dad started renting old UFC matches and watching those. It was the first time I ever got to see real fighting on TV, like people bleeding from getting hit in the face and stuff. It was really crazy.
He was so young in that movie.
He was.
Yeah,
but, he was a really good action star. He's always been a really good actor, but, like, this really introduced me to that. And then, I think of, like, older, his older movies, like more newer movies now, like the...
Equalizer.
Yeah, the Equalizer series, because... the first one was really good. The second one was really good, but it was different from the first one.
Yeah.
And then more recently, the third one, again, another different movie, but really good movies.
Safe House, I really liked
Yeah.
him as an action movie. There's another one, Ryan Reynolds also in that one.
Yeah.
I watched Denzel in a movie last week, and I hadn't seen it in years. I totally forgot about it and how much I liked it. Not really an action movie, but it has some. It's more of like race against time kind of thing, and the movie's called Out of Time.
Yeah.
Eva Mendes is in that movie as well. It's just
There's an... Yeah,
just an awesome, well put together film. The way it was written and everything, and it's not really going to knock your socks off with action, but it's exciting.
One real description of a good action movie is when they have a big explosion and the character's walking away from the explosion. I think of the movie Man on Fire.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what describes an action movie, right? So, yeah, Denzel Washington, I think, to me, is definitely what I would consider underrated. Maybe other people out there are like, he's not underrated. He's totally an action star. Like, he's legit an action star. You just don't hear him in those conversations when you're comparing him to people like Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Chuck Norris, Keanu Reeves, Vin Diesel, Wesley Snipes, Jet Li, all these people. Denzel's definitely up there.
I think a Training Day.
Yeah.
He's great in that, too.
Yeah.
King Kong ain't got nothing on me.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to touch on that point where you say you think other people maybe go, what do you mean? He's an action star, totally. And the reason I'll pick this guy is he's one of my all-time favorites that we didn't even really talk about. But I think because he completely fell off the map, he hasn't been able to uphold that status, and that's Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
For me, like specifically in the 90s, right? Like he came out with some bangers, and then like he got into, I believe it was some gambling problems, and he went bankrupt.
He's actually making a bit of a comeback recently.
Yes, that is true.
He's in that movie with Pedro Pascal where he plays himself basically, and it's really good. If you haven't seen it, it's actually really funny.
I did enjoy it. Yeah.
It's a good movie, and he's making a comeback, and he's really the beautiful thing about that movie in particular is that he kind of laughs at himself, right? And I think that's when an actor can take that step and basically be like, yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've got a lot of good work behind me, and I think that's what he's done. So it's pretty cool. I really like Nicolas Cage's movies.
Yeah, whenever I think of Nicolas Cage, come back to Con Air, probably my favorite quote in that film, and my brother and I pissed ourselves laughing, is the part where his friend gets shot, and his friend's like, maybe I'm thinking that maybe God doesn't exist. And Nicolas Cage, with his Alabama accent, well, I'm going to show you God does exist.
That's the one thing we can't deny about the 80s and 90s is those one-liners will ring true, and we could quote them for hours.
I mean, yeah, and that's, for me, like, I think about, movies like Hot Fuzz. I don't know if you've seen that movie. Simon Pegg's kind of movies from England, and the movie is all about, like, making sure they say a one-liner before they knock off a bad guy. So, always so funny. It was like, did you say chill out before you hit him or put him in the freezer? Like...
If I'm looking at my underrated actor, there's Dave Bautista, Idris Elba, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and Olga Kurylenko. I think are all underrated actors.
I'd probably put Idris Elba at the top of that list.
Yeah, but in terms of underrated, my top one, he's been in so many action films, and he doesn't really ever get recognized. And he's been in an action series too. Would be Sean Bean.
Oh, yeah. Guy dies in everything he's in.
He does.
And it's not a complete movie if Sean Bean's still alive.
But, like, he
didn't die in The Martian.
Yeah, that is true.
That is true. Maybe that's the one thing it was missing.
I'm going to list off these action films. He's been in GoldenEye, Lord of the Rings, the first one, Patriot Games, Equilibrium. He was in Flight Plan. He was in The Martian, Jupiter Ascending, in The Hitchhiker. He's in the Silent Hill films. He was in Ronin. All known, and in the movie called The Island with
The
Ewan
Island.
McGregor.
I was just going to say The Island. And
these are all action films, but he's never the lead actor. He's always supporting actor, but he's great in action roles that he's been
Probably
in.
National Treasure.
National Treasure. Yeah, absolutely loved him in that movie.
So I consider him incredibly underrated.
Another Nicolas Cage movie, actually, which I hope there was a lot of talk of them doing another National Treasure movie.
They've already got the script and production started, as far as I understand. Yep.
Can't wait. But boys, we could go on forever talking about action stars. I'm hoping the audience has some ideas of stars we don't even mention here, because there are too many to mention, really. If you guys are interested in commenting and letting us know, maybe giving us some ideas of things to talk about even, reach out to us on our social media. We are available at the PucknPod on Twitter, on Facebook. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, and of course we're on YouTube as well. You can also reach out through any podcast streaming sites that we are representative on, which is literally every one. I know, like, we're on Seeker and Spotify, iHeartRadio, all those things. And we do appreciate you guys listening to us. Please reach out, let us know you are listening, so we can, kind of steer things in the direction that you want us to. But listen, I want to thank you guys for letting me dedicate this episode to my papa. May he rest in peace. I'm going to miss him forever, but I've got a lot of great, happy memories with him, and he helped make me the man I am today. So thank you guys for letting me do that.
Yeah, rest in peace, Paulio.
Absolutely, Paul.
Yeah. Once again, I want to thank you guys for listening. We will be back for another one. But before then, my name is Joe.
My name is Brandon.
And I'm Paul.
We'll see you guys in the next one.